If you were as obsessed with video games as I was, odds are good that you wanted to do more than just play video games. You wanted to watch video games, to read about video games. Heck, you probably wanted to be in video games. And if that is the case for you, then I bet you loved Nick Arcade. This short-lived Nintendo game show aired over only 2 seasons, but it left a lasting impression on video games and the kids like you and I who played them. In this decidedly 90s show, two teams of kids would battle in a series of video games, trivia questions, and over obstacles for the right to enter a virtual reality video game. A relatively novel invention for the time, and one that, honestly, didn't look easy. Nick Arcade was created and produced by James Bethia and Kareem Matif, high school classmates who would go on to enter the television industry. Bethia started his career as a cast member of Livewire, an older Nickelodeon TV series. He would then move behind the scenes, where he and Matif would go on to produce Nick Arcade. The show was hosted by Phil Moore, a comedian and actor who would go on to build an extensive filmography. Before appearing in front of the camera, Moore worked behind the scenes on the MTV show Remote Control, then as a warm-up act for Let's Make a Deal, a game show produced by Dick Clark Productions. It was during this time that Moore was given the chance to audition for Nick Arcade, an audition for which he was successful. Sets were programmed and mapped onto a blue screen using what Matif called the, quote, highest and ultimate keying system that was available at the time. Matif would say that he maintained every piece of digital property that he would need to recreate the show. The custom games were developed by Psygenesis, the development studio behind games like Lemmings. This programming happened just before the company was purchased by Sony Computer Entertainment and became a wholly owned subsidiary of the company. Nick Arcade would open with a face-off round in which players would play a custom programmed Nick game to see who could get the highest score. 8 games were used throughout the series' run, and they usually involved racing, shooting, or dodging. Indeed, 3 of the games, Brainstorm, Battle of the Bands, and Star Defenders, were basically identical with each other, just slightly altered graphics. Winners would be awarded 25 points, and the show would proceed to painfully awkward introductions, with awkward pre-teams seemingly facing off against the uber high-energy Moore. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank BetterHelp, who is the sponsor of today's video. I wanted to partner with BetterHelp because I know that many of you, like me, know what it's like to feel overwhelmed by real-world circumstances, to not meet your own goals, to struggle with key relationships, or to just move forward with your life. If that's the case for you, seeing a therapist can dramatically improve your life. A therapist can help you identify external pressures that are impacting your internal values or feelings, help you develop a timeline for your life that feels true to who you are, and help you develop tools to measure progress on your terms and no one else's. BetterHelp can help you write a new story in your life. With BetterHelp, you can fill out a questionnaire and find a therapist that can suit your needs in as little as a couple of days. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient, and ensuring that you have access to more than 30,000 licensed professionals with a wide range of specialties and backgrounds. This means that you can easily switch therapists at no additional cost if your therapist is not a right fit. Fortunately, BetterHelp screens its therapists to make sure that they are well qualified, and a robust customer support team is available to help. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5-star rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. With BetterHelp, you can start fresh today. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/almostsomething and get 10% off of your first month therapy. Phil Moore's enthusiasm would wind up becoming a trademark of the show, along with his ad-lib songs as they move from segment to segment. In a 2013 Ask Reddit, Moore said that he loved singing songs and working with the contestants, describing the atmosphere of the show as, quote, one big party despite the nerves of the contestants. Apparently, Moore's ultra-high energy performance led to the creation of a Phil Moore drinking game, which I could not find any additional information on, but if you had to take a shot every time Moore raised his voice or ad-libbed a song, you'd be dead. Moore also said that the rap parties for the show involved an edit that made him look like he was appearing in an infomercial. Alas, that footage is not available on YouTube. The show would then proceed to the meat of the challenge. Players had to take Mikey, more or less the show's mascot, and move him around a 3x6 grid to reach the end goal. They could move Mikey in any direction, and moving him would result in the world's most repetitive music. Players would run into what Moore called the 4 Ps: points, puzzles, pop quizzes, or prizes. Puzzles would require a team to engage in some sort of activity, like unscrambling a video or guessing an artist. Sometimes, a square would result in a player playing a video challenge. So, honestly, there was another option besides the 4 Ps, but whatever, in which a team member had to achieve some sort of goal in a video game, like collecting 30 rings in Sonic. Points would be awarded based on how much the other team member wagered. According to Matif, developing these challenges would be difficult. Matif's assistant, Sam Clifford, would apparently play games submitted by video game companies for hundreds of hours in an effort to find suitable challenges. The games came from the entire range of systems that were available at the time, including Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, TurboGrafx, and more. According to Matif, 8 games were for Nintendo, 11 were for Super Nintendo, and the remaining 23 games were divided up among other systems. Interestingly enough, one of the games that Nick Arcade had was a prototype of Sonic 2. Moore described getting that game as a real lucky break. In most cases, Mikey didn't reach the end goal as players would run out of time. A tie-breaking question would be asked, and the team that answered the question would be awarded points. There were 11 different themed worlds for Mikey, each of which came with some enemies. That included a town bully, a genie, or a pirate, and if you ran into the enemy, you lost control of Mikey. There would always be 2 rounds here, and whoever won the main round would move on to the video zone, which, honest to God, looked like an absolute awkward nightmare that made Legends of the Hidden Temple look like a kindergartner's playground. This is the part of the game in which players appeared to be inside of a video zone. In reality, they were watching themselves in an off-screen monitor, awkwardly navigating their way around the stage. Their goal was almost always the same: collect 3 objects. Doing so would allow players to move on to the next stage. Each video zone stage was slightly different. Level 1 featured a jungle, a moon base, or an ancient tomb, while Level 2 featured a food fight, mine maze, submarine search, and more. In both seasons, the final room was the wizard level. Players would team up to face Murloc, Scorchia, or Mongo, touching 3 orbs before time expired or before they ran out of health. Now, it's worth noting that these sets were big. Sets were as wide as 30 feet and 2 stories, which meant that there was a lot of room for contestants to try to cover. Furthermore, the monitors showed contestants in reverse, and while they were allowed to practice ahead of time, Moore would say in interviews that it was a very difficult system for players to master, particularly in the heat of the moment when people are cheering them on. That probably explains why contestants usually had a harder time with the system and almost always didn't win. Funny tidbit: the 3 villains were voiced, and the backgrounds were changed in Season 2 to be better customized for each respective villain. The voice of Scorchia? That was the wife of Kareem Matif, who was apparently very pregnant when she recorded the voice. Moore would say that he laughed every time he heard the voice, because while it sounds really sinister and evil, it was actually being recorded by a small pregnant lady. So, to be clear, these games were tough, if not downright impossible. Some challenges, like the Nile River Raft, required players to wait for objects to appear for them. These challenges put players at a huge disadvantage, and this probably explains why so few players ever actually even made it to the end of the challenge. Winners of the Video Zone would usually be awarded a nice vacation, including a return trip to Universal Studios. Other prizes included more trips to Orlando and the Kids Space Camp. Other prizes on the show varied wildly and were usually sent in by sponsors. These included a slew of tech products available at the time, including cameras and cassette recorders. Sometimes the prizes skewed towards sports, including inline skates or skateboard. Other times they were random. Anyone else remember the 6-player croquet set? Dozens of different prizes were offered. The most popular was the Casio keyboard, which was won a total of 10 times. Alas, the show was not long for this earth. It lasted a mere 2 seasons, airing in 1992. 84 episodes were produced, and the show would run in syndication until 1997. Nickelodeon, ever aware of the need to cross-promote their material, also made a conscious effort to reference other shows. Special editions were hosted for the cast of other Nick shows, including Salute Your Shorts, Welcome Freshmen, and Clarissa Explains It All. Like many game shows of the 80s and 90s, Nick Arcade would capture some celebrities that hadn't made it yet. For example, Joey Fatone of NSYNC would appear on Nick Arcade in one of the show's earlier episodes. Fatone did not make the bonus round. In 2015, Bethia and Matif tried again, seeking to recapture that 90s magic in the most 21st century way possible. They organized a Kickstarter and attempted to raise $350,000, which would allow them to film a pilot. Called Nth Level, the new version of the show would still be hosted by Phil Moore. Promotional materials included a Facebook page that shared updates on the program and featured pictures of Moore in various distinct high-energy poses. The efforts of the Kickstarter did receive good press, getting mentions from Twitter celebrities and articles in magazines like Entertainment Weekly and the AV Club. Unfortunately, it was not to be, as the Kickstarter barely raised $3,000. Since then, as best as I could tell, there has not been any other effort to bring the show back, and it appears to be gone for good. Today, you can watch the show all over YouTube. You can also stream every episode on Paramount Plus, which is the main repository for a slew of Nick content. Host Phil Moore would go on to host numerous other Nickelodeon shows, including What Would You Do and Figure It Out. He would also work as a writer and producer on a variety of other kids' content. To his infinite credit, Moore regularly appears on social media, does interviews, and shows up at other Nick-related events, including conventions. In a separate Ask Reddit, Moore said he would love to participate in a reboot of the show, but noted the challenges of such a production, saying that every effort to reboot most 90s shows had failed, given that time had passed the hook by. As Moore said in an interview, "What is the hook for 2024? Great question. And until it's answered, I don't think we're going to be getting a reboot anytime soon." James Bethia would go on to create and produce numerous other pieces of kids' television and film, and would be hired in 1997 to be the director of programming at UPN. He would also appear as an actor in Iron Man and Iron Man 2. Kareem Matif would work on a couple of other Nickelodeon shows, including U to U and Launchbox, before leaving the industry to become the managing director of his own business, Matif Enterprises. According to his Amazon biography, Matif's business is, quote, dedicated to developing and promoting various intellectual properties and media assets related to the arts, entertainment, and sciences. Nick Arcade was a special show, and despite its brief run, it made a real impact on many at the time, certainly including me. It was rare that a show gave you the chance to literally be inside of a video game instead of playing one, especially in the 90s. But Nick Arcade found a way to make the dreams of dozens of kids come true. Furthermore, the show was genuinely groundbreaking and was among the first, if not the first, to incorporate virtual reality into its gameplay. That alone made it something special and absolutely worth reliving. Thank you so much for watching, my friends, and as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click on the next video that the almighty YouTube algorithm has served up to you. And don't forget to like or subscribe. Have a wonderful day out there, my friends, and hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I like making it. Take care, everybody.